Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will be talking about the never-ending debate of who is the greatest fighter of all time in MMA. I've never really made a video about this, so I thought it would be fun to give my opinion on this whole thing. Um, Unlike a few other sports where there's like maybe two or three clear contenders for the title, like if you think about basketball, maybe people talk about LeBron James and like Michael Jordan. If you talk about tennis, you have Djokovic, you have Nadal, and maybe like Roger Federer, even though I think Djokovic is like clearly ahead of both of them. But in MMA, it's quite different because the number of parameters is like really different. Like it's still an evolving sport. The fighters are still evolving, so the priorities in the fight game is also constantly changing. So it's hard to really compare fighters head to head. And anytime a fighter is on the verge of greatness, be it Alex Pereira going for the third title, be it Islam Makhachev finally breaking the long-standing, like the consecutive win streak of Anderson Silva, Jon Jones will stop punching his wife to pull his phone out and start talking mad shit on Twitter. This was the case last week when Islam Makhachev defeated Ian Gary. Not necessarily the greatest fight, but it's still impressive that he was able to still pull it off. And he also like at the same time beaten the win streak of Anderson Silva, which is quite impressive because that has been there for more than a decade, maybe, or almost a decade now. And Jon Jones started talking mad shit, obviously. Like, why are these people calling Islam Makhachev the GOAT? Obviously, not everyone is saying Islam Makhachev is the GOAT. I think it's more so on the Makhachev fans and also the Dagestani fans in general. Uh, but Jon Jones is just simply like too insecure, man. He's just too insecure. Um, so the whole debate has now again revamped, should I say? And I thought it'd be fun to talk about who I think is the greatest fighter of all time. Uh, there is also like no clear criteria to do this because like it's changing. Like some Jon Jones, no, not Jon Jones, but like Anderson Silva and Demetrius Johnson have like really long win streaks, and then you have like Jon Jones and like Islam Makhachev. These guys having like titles in multiple divisions while also having like pretty good performances. We also need to think about the skill set, like how their skill set would translate to the current generation. So there is like too many moving variables to say clearly like this guy is um, the clear greatest of all time. So let's talk with the man himself, Jon Jones. Really great win streaks, really good performances against great fighters. Has wins over like Daniel Cormier twice, Alexander Gustafsson twice. Technically beat Dominic Reyes on paper. Um, Not necessarily the greatest win with Cyril Gahn, but it's like Cyril Gahn just made too big of a mistake doing what he did against Jon Jones, and then like his submission defense was never there to survive against someone like Jon. And it shows like how good Jon is. Jon is really a generational talent. There is no doubt there. A skill set will always be like really good for the current generation, especially the generation where it's heavily like strikers, and his skill set, I think he still would be like pretty dominant for the current generation of light heavyweight fighters, which are not necessarily the highest, the most skilled fighters we have seen in the division, but that just shows like how good Jon is. But the elephant in the room and the most obvious thing, aside from his out of the octagon antics, which people really want to like. Anytime some you talk to a Jon Jones fan, you will immediately say like, ah, why are you talking about what he does like outside of the octagon? Because he's punching women, man. Because he's like punching his wife. Because he's beating up his wife. He's running over pregnant women. He has like several drunken drive cases on him. Um, he wasn't he threatening the USADA like employees when they came to do the drug test on him, and he's just like always doing this. So the Jon Jones fans always like their defense is like, why are you talking about is out of the octagon antics? But inside the octagon, performances rely on what he was doing out of the octagon, which is that he was shooting PEDs several times, and he was probably like always on him, on them his entire career. He has more PED failures than Khabib as defenses, or should I say, here there is like it shows three of them, but I think it's actually more than this. Uh, there is simply no like going around this. There is like the greatest of all time cannot be a PED cheat. Not only can he not be a PED cheat, he cannot be like a drug abuser basically. He has several failures on with PEDs. He's an abuser at the end of the day. Like both drugs and also like his wife and children, I guess. But this is something that you simply cannot get past when you want to be the greatest of all time. For me personally, and I think a lot of people do share the same uh, sentiment when it comes to the greatest of all time. Especially when you have other fighters who have always stayed clean, or at least we have never had any kind of doubts when it came to this. Um, are they on them? Or are they not? So it's I for me um, that simply takes John out. He has always also been a coward. He refused to face Chael Sonnen. He was afraid of Chael Sonnen. He was afraid of Daniel Cormier in heavyweight. He was afraid of Francis Ngannou. He was afraid of Tom Aspinall. I think he was afraid of them. I don't think like a lot of people would say Daniel Cormier says that Jon Jones is not afraid of them. Jon Jones is not afraid. A lot of people say this, but I think he was afraid of them. He was afraid of getting knocked out. He was afraid of getting like finished inside the octagon, and that is not a quality that I would want in the greatest fighter of all time, especially in a sport like this. Um, that's more of a cherry on the top thing. The main reason is being the PED failures for me. Like even if he was afraid and didn't have the PED failures, I think I would have put him as the goat of the sport. But this is just too much, man. This is just too much. So now on to the other side of the recent debate, which is Islam Makhachev. And a lot of people apparently have amnesia when it comes to Islam Makhachev because Makhachev is not clean either. Makhachev is not clean either. He has also popped for steroids before. He popped for meldonium, if I remember it correctly. And I always remembered this because I used to be like a hater of Islam Makhachev because he was facing the fighters that I really liked in Alex Volkanovski, in Charles Oliveira, and Dustin Poirier. And he was also like not. We were also not seeing a lot of his personality when it comes to Islam Makhachev at the time, and that was mostly because he did not speak enough English, and Habib was talking for him. That's more or less the reason why he got the Charles Oliveira fight in the first place. But he has grown on me ever since then, and nowadays I really do like Islam both as a fighter and as a person. I do have like some other grievances with him, but he seems like a generally good guy. So it's such a shame that he has popped for PEDs before, and I know people. I think Usada. What was the guy's name? The chief of Usada or something. The bald guy who comes up and gives the jacket. He was talking about how it was a great, it was a really bad thing that what happened with Islam Akachev because he had a heart condition, he had a surgery, and that was something that was on this. that was not necessarily a fault of Islam Makhachev, but more so on the USADA side. I really don't think it changes anything, man. He took the PEDs, meldonium. He took them. I know he says that he took it for surgery, but if he had done it like in Russia or Dagestan or someplace like this, I think it's probably quite not that hard to fake these certificates and like to get medical certificates to show that you had went or undergone surgery or like you took some medicine for medical purposes and stuff. So I never really like, I always had this in mind, and I never considered Islam Akachev will never be in the contention either for me, just simply for this reason. But then I thought I came across this video on YouTube from Fight Society, and um, he went in a little bit more detail with the whole meldonium and what was happening with Islam Akachev, and he was talking about how a lot of what happened at the time with Russian fighters or Russian athletes, um, and drugs, because it was more of a systemic issue from Russia to get like more accolades and accomplishments in sports and stuff. Um, but there is just too much uncertainty. It's not like Team Habib and Team Ali Abdelaziz is like full of clean fighters either. They're it's riddled with like fighters who have popped for PEDs. In Team Habib, we have Usman Nurmagomedov who did pop last year, I think, for the same thing. I think he also popped for Macedonia, maybe not in that case. But there is Rizwan, there is like with Ali Abdelaziz fighters, there is like the Usman brothers, there is the Asaitar brothers. If you remember what happened during COVID, if you were watching the sport at the time, you would remember that one of the I think it's Ottoman Asaitar that is his name is Otman Asaitar, right? I don't know. Maybe now for some reason my head is not like the name sounds kind of new. But one of the Asaitar brothers like scaled a building to bring in a bag, which he later claimed is full of potatoes. Like he got cut from UFC if I remember correctly, and this thing is just too common with Team Habib and Team Ali Abdelaziz for me to simply like say, okay, maybe there is like a benefit of doubt that you should give for Islam Makhachev. And if you remember it correctly, there was also a lot of thing that went on when he faced Alex Volkanovski the first time. Dan Hooker, Alex Volkanovski, uh, and a bunch of other fighters from City Kickboxing called Islam Makhachev out for taking IV, which is completely like understandable, right? Like if your opponent is like calling you're cheating and you're doing something like illegal, um, there you should take it with a grain of salt, because it's your opponent. They want to get like um, whatever dirt they can get on you. But then Ali Abdelaziz comes in Twitter. If you watched this whole thing live, you would remember this. Ali Abdelaziz goes on Twitter and claims that you can legally, like within the rules of USADA and UFC, take 20 liters of IV, and it's completely fine. And he basically doxed Islam Akachev for taking IV. It's not the nurse that Dan Hooker claimed, or Alex Volkanovski called him out for. It's Ali Abdelaziz who doxed Islam Makhachev in the first place for taking IV. So I think some funny business did go on this. There is just too much occurrence for me to like like give Islam the benefit of the doubt. So he will never be in the GOAT discussion for me, no matter what he does. I think he has like, if there was none of this ordeal with Islam, maybe there is a very good argument like two more wins, and you can maybe argue that Islam Makhachev is the greatest of all time. But right now he is not, regardless, and there is just too much uncertainty with him too when it comes to PEDs and IV stuff, etc. Um, Another fighter from the same camp, Khabib. I don't think a lot of people really call him the GOAT, aside from the Dagestani fan base. I really like Khabib. I think he was clean, but at the end of the day, too short of a career. Not necessarily, he hasn't really faced a variety of styles that is hard for him to beat. And yes, it's very impressive what he did. 29-0, dominated basically everyone, lost maybe like 2 rounds. Very impressive to do it. But he simply did not face enough stylistic challenges for me to uh, consider him for the topic, and a lot of people don't really consider him anyway. So um, I think it's more understandable with Habib why a lot of fighters don't consider him the GOAT. Um, but regardless, great fighter. Really do like Habib. Um, it's just unfortunate that what happened with him, with his father, and how the whole thing ended for him. Because it would have been like really interesting to see what he would have done against Tony Ferguson, what he would have done against Charles Oliveira, what he would have done against who else? It's like Arman Sarikan even. Um, it's he did not face like enough opponents for me to consider him um, at the top of the pyramid. Basically, this is a really like underrated fighter now because not so many people are like seeing how close Volkanovski is to becoming the greatest of all time. He has 6 title defenses in the current generation, man, which is already like extremely impressive. His quality of opponents are really high. Um, this is also something that I don't necessarily agree with Islam Makhachev. I don't think his quality of opponents that high. Yes, he beat Charles Oliveira. Yes, he beat Alex Volkanovski. Ian Gary is a great win. JDM is a really good win. But aside from this, like, who did he fight? Renato Moicano, really old Dustin Poirier, um, Bobby Green, Dan Hooker. These are not like Dustin Poirier is a great win if he had won, if he had beaten him like during his prime, which I don't necessarily think Dustin Poirier was when Islam faced him, and he made it also like really hard for himself by fighting a really terrible game plan against Dustin. So I'm going off on a tangent again. Volkanovski is so close to becoming like the greatest of all time. I would say like 2, 3 more wins. I think you can really make a really good argument for why he is the greatest of all time. His skill set is really high. His fight IQ is really high. His quality of opponents is really high. Is really high. Um, when he faced Islam the first time, put it on. He put Islam on notice. Um, that was just like this man is. He has 6 title defenses. He has 8 title wins. Um, Undefeated in featherweight aside from Ilia Topuria. Um, if has faced like a variety of opponents. He has not really he has faced a jiu-jitsu fighter in Brian Ortega. He has faced Islam Makhachev. He has faced Max Holloway. He has faced Yair Rodriguez. There is just too many variety of styles that he has faced, and there is just such a good argument if he beats like 2 more of fighters. And I think Movsar is like a really good addition to it because Movsar is also really elite. And I think a lot of people really confuse Movsar with Movsar's style with how Volkanovski did against Islam. I think it's a different fighter with Movsar. Movsar is much more like uh, Movsar is more like Habib than he is like Islam. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how he does against Volkanovski. If Volkanovski like wins the fight clearly and maybe fights 1 more time, I think, and gets a win, I think there is a really good argument to be made for Volkanovski, man. Which is really great because he is one of the truly inspiring fighters, a great ambassador for the sport, skill set so high. Um, it would be really nice to have him as a GOAT, and I really do hope for him to do it. I think I hope he fights like 2, 3 more times. I hope he wins those fights because it does change if he loses. Um, but I really do hope Volkanovski gets it done, and gets into the argument of the greatest of all time. Then we have Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva is a little bit different from Jon Jones and Islam Makhachev, for example. He also has popped for PEDs, but it's a little bit more understandable. I don't qualify him either way, like with or without PEDs, but he's a little bit more understandable because he only popped not during his prime, not before his prime, but after he got his leg broken, which is very understandable. When you go through an injury like this, you want the bones to heal properly. You are afraid of like kicking again with that leg. It's understandable, but that's also not the primary reason why I don't consider him the GOAT, because he does not necessarily have the most well-rounded skill set. Um, does not have that great of a wrestling game. Um, Decent jiu-jitsu stuff, but not necessarily that high either. It's primarily more of a striker, and I think his skill set would not necessarily translate to the current generation either. Like I think DDP would easily like beat him. I think Hamza Chimaev chokes him out in the first round. Um, there is too many opponents I think would beat. I think Anthony Hernandez would be a tough fight already for Anderson Silva, man. It's quite weird. I don't think his skill set necessarily translates to the current generation, and that is more of a problem than his resume, which is not necessarily the greatest, and also the skill set does not. I mean, like the PED is also there, so these are the reason why I don't necessarily consider Anderson Silva the greatest of all time. And then the next two fighters, I think you can switch them however you want. I think I have a clear GOAT for MMA, but I'm, I would understand if you say Demetrius Johnson is the greatest of all time. Insanely long win streak, has the record for the most consecutive title defenses in UFC. Um, has beaten several great fighters. Um, is I mean, it's not like the most impressive resume. Like he does not have the Volkanovski or like a Jon Jones or an Islam Makhachev level of. I mean, like Islam Makhachev doesn't. Okay, he does not necessarily have the strongest like list of names on his resume. I know Benavides is a pretty good name to have. He beat like Horiguchi when he was like a baby. Um, has a win over Henry Cejudo, but it's not that hard, man. I don't know. I also don't know how he would do in the current generation. Like I think Pantoja would probably beat him. Joshua Van might beat him. There are there are several fighters who I think would give him a lot of trouble, but I would be. I think he has a very good chance of beating all of them anyway, and he's a great ambassador for the sport too. Has always stayed clean. Has always like vocally spoke against PED uses in the sport. And if you say Demetrius Johnson is the greatest of all time, I like all the power to you. I have like not necessarily the greatest argument against it. Um, and I do really like DJ as a fighter and as a person. So it's really good to have someone like him be in the contention for the title of greatest of all time, because his skill set is really high at the end of the day too. Um, But for me, the greatest of all time is clearly GSP. He basically has done everything that I would want to see in the greatest of all time. Has an insane 9 title defense, I think, maybe 10 title defense. I think he's like just one or two short of Demetrius Johnson when it comes to consecutive title defenses. Has a title in multiple divisions. Has faced like several different like styles of fighting. He has beaten. It's insane, man. Like someone who comes like him and Jose Aldo always confuses me. Like how much of an athletic freak do you have to be for you to develop wrestling or anti-wrestling, be it either, to the level GSP and Jose Aldo have gotten to? Was primarily a karateka fighter when he was starting, and then he developed a wrestling game that is so potent that he was ragdolling all American wrestlers, NCAA Division One, Division Two wrestlers in UFC. Uh, has taken down, I think, every fighter he has faced in the UFC. His skill set is so high. He can strike really well. He can kick really well. He has an insane wrestling game. He is top control. I think is second to none. Um, has a really good jiu-jitsu game, even though he like prioritize being safe. And I think that's the only thing that people want to mention when it comes to GSP, right? Like, hi, he has a lot of decision wins. Who fucking cares, man? Who fucking cares? That's not what makes someone great or not. Beating and accomplishments makes a fighter great, not necessarily like wins. Wins are, I mean, not necessarily finishes. It's just one way to win a fight. That does not necessarily mean like you have to have like 30 knockouts to be called the greatest of all time. I don't necessarily agree with it. That's a really stupid argument to be making uh, against someone. And GSP has faced strikers, has faced wrestlers, has faced high level like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu guys, um, has faced kickers. He has faced Damian Maya. He has faced Nick Diaz. He has faced Matt Serra. Not the greatest fighter, but his BJJ game is elite. Has beaten Matt Hughes. Has beaten a juiced up Johnny Hendricks. I know, take it. We have to take it with a grain of salt because I don't really also consider that as a win for GSP. But on paper, he did beat him at the end of the day. The I think I do this. What I do with GSP is what I do with Jon Jones. Jon Jones lost to Dominic Reyes. There is no doubt about it. But I can't necessarily like use that as an argument against why he's not the GOAT. And that also goes with GSP. He really, in my opinion, is the greatest of all time. There is like no doubt about it. Double like championship in multiple weight classes. Not necessarily the greatest double champ because he did beat Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping, I think a lot of people also like fully underestimate him because they want to like downplay GSP's um, accomplishment, but I think it does not necessarily like take anything away from it. It would have added a lot more if he had beaten someone much better. But again, Jon Jones beat Cyril Gane and like Stipe Miocic. You can't really make that argument that he won like someone who is truly a great fighter in MMA. He did not face Francis Ngannou. He did not face Tom Aspinall. Um, he faced a really shy Cyril Gane who immediately threw the fight because he was just nervous about fighting Jon Jones. It does not necessarily like work. This argument does not necessarily work for me when it comes to GSP either. He has, at the end of the day, he is a double champ. He has the second longest consecutive title defense record. He has faced several different opponents stylistically. His skill set is extremely transferable to the current generation, which speaks to the level of skill and athleticism that GSP had and the domination that he had. Because if you ask me like uh, who wins in a fight between GSP and Islam Makhachev, I don't know. I think like this was a huge debate when Khabib was the 155 champ, right? I think GSP just absolutely dominates and destroys Khabib, but Islam Makhachev is a little bit different. I think his boxing is a little bit too clean. His kicking game is like really shining these days, so it's gonna be a really hard fight for Islam to win, but he can win against GSP, but so can GSP, which is insane to say because GSP's prime was in 2013, man. He is not one of these recent fighters, which is basically what 20 years ago. So his style and his skill set transfers 20 years, 15 years later. Okay. I know I did not. It's not 20 years. I was just like, it's an hyperbole. It does not like matter. But at the end of the day, the argument is that his skill set 12 years later still works really well against a monster like Islam Makhachev, which is much more impressive. Um, and I truly believe that GSP is the greatest fighter of all time. Um, Let me know in the comments who do you think is the greatest of all time. Unless you say Jon Jones or Islam Makhachev, I think I might agree with you, or Khabib even. I think GSP and DJ are the clear um, contenders for this title, with Alex Volkanovski like really, really close by. One or two wins are more for Volkanovski, and he would also be in the argument for the greatest of all time. So yeah, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in another video.